Hello, and welcome to Let's Talk Oregon. I'm your host, Mike Ducett. On today's show, we are going to be sitting down in both segments with the 50th Assembly District Representative Jenna Jacobson, who will be here to talk to us about her recent work in the Wisconsin State Legislative Session and the proposed bills she has on the table. So, this isn't your first time on the show, Jenna. No. So again, thank you for taking time out of your really busy schedule. And from what I understand, you've had quite a few busy weeks now as the Wisconsin State Assembly and the legislature itself is ending hopefully sometime this week or early next, right?
Yeah.
So can you then describe for our viewers kind of what these last few weeks have been like as you've been furiously kind of trying to finish up these bills and get them onto the floor for debate?
Yeah, well, I always describe it as the last few weeks of session are wild because, especially being in the minority party, you don't know necessarily what is happening until the general public does. You get your committee notices at the same time the rest of the state does. But essentially in January, Speaker Voss announced that he wanted to finish our legislative session at the end of February. So we've been having multiple committee hearings. One day, my understanding was every single legislative committee for the Assembly, so I believe that's 24 committees met on one day.
Oh, wow.
So you can imagine it's been pretty crazy. Sometimes your committees overlap, lots of bills to dig through, but it's also pretty exciting work. So.
And as we talked before the show, you said that kind of this February deadline is a little bit of a self-imposed deadline. You could go further if needed, but what's been the tradition of the past several years?
Yeah, so when we start the Assembly session, so in January of an odd-numbered year, we approve a calendar, and those calendars have us going through April of 2026. But traditionally, Speaker Voss has wanted to get done sometime in February. So just like in previous sessions, he's announced that that was his goal, and so we're all rushing to meet that deadline.
Okay, and as when this will air next week, actually, the state address will have been given by Tony Evers, his final one.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to kind of? I know this will be foretelling the future here, but what kind of things do you think Governor Evers is going to address in that?
Well, he put out his legislative priorities for 2026 earlier in the year, and so I think that the state of the state will mirror a lot of that. So we're talking about property tax relief, education funding, and just really focusing on the everyday expenses that people are having to deal with, and what we as a legislature can do to ease some of that.
Great. Well, I look forward to hearing that tomorrow, and we'll see if you were right on that episode next week. But so I was listening to Wisconsin Public Radio this morning, and I heard a story about the funding crisis for Wisconsin I. And Wisconsin I, for our viewers that might not know this, is basically the C-SPAN of Wisconsin, right?
Yeah.
It is the governmental. It's a nonprofit organization that really offers up that transparency for government operations, records government proceedings, and has been a longstanding tradition of kind of open government here in the state of Wisconsin. Can you give us an update on that status? It's my understanding that the Assembly and the Senate have, I think, different proposals and different solutions. So where do we stand with that now? And is there a path forward for this really incredibly important service?
Yeah. So the Speaker has some money that's budgeted that he allocated about $50,000 to get Wisconsin I back up and running for the month of February. So all of January, Wisconsin I was dark. And so we were kind of to that history of open government and transparency. All of our committee hearings and floor sessions that we had in January were unfortunately not aired to the public. But in February, we were able to get that back and running because of the $50,000 that the Speaker found. And then the Assembly did introduce a bill to fund Wisconsin I moving forward. But the Senate is, like you said, kind of on a different page. And I know that there are conversations happening in the background to get some alignment because Wisconsin I is relatively new when you think of the history of our state. It started in the early 2000s, but people rely on that regularly so that they don't have to travel to the Capitol. And when you think of how much of Wisconsin there is outside of Madison, it's important that we have that access for folks. And I would say the other thing that that had happened when Wisconsin I went dark was a rarely used assembly rule was enforced during that time, not allowing legislators to record or live stream the proceedings. So we, even as individual members of the public or legislators weren't allowed to just hop on a Facebook Live or something like that. So it's very important to us that we continue to have that transparency and accessibility for
And
folks.
do we anticipate that in this legislative session you all will be able to find this solution, or are there particulars about the Assembly proposal that are different than the Senate, or how does that shake down?
It's really hard to say because the Senate is really taking its time to do a lot of the work of folks this session. And so it's really hard to see what will shake out. But like I said, I know there are active conversations, not only among leadership, but just in general among members between the Senate and the Assembly, because many of us see this as an important piece for our constituents. So.
Yeah, just like this show, we believe in having our local officials on, having you on, and transparency in government is a super important thing. So if you obviously feel passionate about this, please reach out to Jenna, or please reach out to your legislators and make sure that we get this important service funded. I think that's going to be extremely busy. So as I did my research for this, a little bit of Googling here and there, I noticed you've been kind of co-sponsoring quite a few bills over the last session and trying to get a lot of these things and momentum off the ground. And one of those that you offered would be kind of establishing some stiffer criminal penalties for the use of AI or deepfakes in scams and other exploitative ways. So as I understand, this is building on some work you also did last year in 2025. So as you see it, how would this bill help protect Wisconsin citizens from this kind of abuse?
Yeah. So this bill, it puts a criminal penalty for any sort of deep fakes, whether it's imagery or audio. And really what we're targeting is senior citizens, vulnerable adults who may receive a phone call or an email or a video that they think is a legitimate friend or relative, but it's in truth somebody trying to separate them from their money, to put it mildly. And we really want to make sure that we have those protections in place because the field of AI is growing rapidly, as we all know, and government is frequently behind the tech curve, but the faster that we can try to catch up, similar to what we did last year with the political campaigns in AI, the quicker we can make those protections for our communities, the better for them. So.
And in the current background, what kind of penalties already exist, and how would this be different? Is there literally nothing?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
you'd have to. If you can catch the person, there is your traditional fraud penalties that are out there, but we wanted to make sure that, especially with how AI is advancing, and it really can be challenging for folks to distinguish between what is AI and what is not, to make sure that we're really driving home the point that there's a lot of things we can use AI for that are really helpful and really good, but that for this particular instance, we need to make sure that we're protecting
Now, do you have bipartisan support on this particular bill? Are you working with other folks, or is it still kind of just you and a couple co-sponsors on the Democratic side?
Yes. Last time I looked, not bipartisan yet, but reach out to my office. I'm always happy to have you sign on.
Well, it just seems like a really common sense, no nonsense kind of thing where we're really, especially those vulnerable seniors in our communities, those who might be the first to fall prey to those things, we should really be thinking about protecting those citizens for sure. So.
Absolutely. And we've been doing similar work. I'm on the Financial Institutions Committee, and we just passed a bill out of committee regulating cryptocurrency, which again, when you look at the people who are most likely victims of going to cryptocurrency kiosks, it's our senior citizens and our vulnerable adults. We also did a bill that would create a pause for financial transactions where your local banker who has a pretty good relationship with you says, hey, this is outside of your normal behavior.
Sure.
Yeah, so let's maybe just take a break, take a step back, and really evaluate this transaction. Because again, the scammers are going quick, they're always evolving, and so the faster we can create legislation to protect Wisconsinites, the better.
Well, I really hope that's successful. I think that's a really important issue.
Yeah, me too.
So other kind of things ripped from the headlines as well is we know there's been quite a conundrum with some recent legislation that's passed, and I believe it's in accordance with, is it the Tavern League, I believe?
The wedding,
Yeah, with the wedding barns and other wedding venues and their ability to offer like alcohol to their guests during this time, which I've been to many weddings, and we all know that in times of these celebrations, especially in our state, alcohol is a big component at a lot of people's weddings. And if I understand it, this bill that you're proposing offers a compromise. And so can you kind of explain the process and where you are with that one as well?
Yeah, so last session we did a large bill that changed how we did alcohol sales and licensing. And in that bill, there was a provision for what we call non-sale event venues. So wedding barns is more traditionally what we think of. There's a lot of venues that it can happen, but wedding barns are where it happens most traditionally in our state. And that's a situation where you're renting out a space. They're not selling alcohol. You know, there's no sale of alcohol there. You're bringing beverages or alcohol to the event, just like you're bringing catering, and then managing that on your own. And a lot of, when we look at our agriculture community, a lot of our farmers have, as they're selling the cows or switching just to row crops, they've found this way to repurpose their barn and still generate revenue and keep the family farm in the family. And so this bill from last session limited the amount of these non-sale event that can happen in these wedding barns to 6 per year, which, as you can imagine, makes it unsustainable to stay in business.
I can imagine there's more than 6 in an entire season for most of these places.
Yes.
During especially the busy June through August wedding season.
Yep.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and you think, you know, in order to make the conversions to make your barn into a beautiful event venue, it takes a lot of money. So these barns, these facilities were kind of stuck in this situation where starting in a relatively short amount of time, they were going to be limited to 6 events, which isn't really going to cover their costs. They have weddings that are already scheduled and events that are already scheduled. So we introduced a bill to expand that to 36 events per year to try and find a compromise for these businesses to stay happening, to make sure that couples can still get married in their wedding barns and still respect our alcohol laws.
Well, I was married in my father-in-law's farm in Kansas in a barn that he built specifically for that wedding because he looked into what it costs to actually rent a spice and decided he would build it instead. But so I have fond memories of my own wedding barn experience back in 2005. So I really hope that this bill is passed and that we really help out those small business owners as they really kind of chart a path forward with their investments into these properties. I think that's really important. So we'll be back after this break with more pressing issues with your Wisconsin State Assembly Representative, Ms. Jenna Jacobson. We'll see you in a little bit.
Everyone has a ritual, that small thing to keep us focused.
A habit we never skip, to clear our minds and elevate our performance.
But what do you do to keep your head in the game? To drown out the self-doubt and support your mental health. Because being your best isn't just about taking care of your body.
It's about taking care of your mental health. Discover the resources that you need to keep your mind focused and your mental health a priority.
Welcome back from the break. Again, we're here with State Representative Jenna Jacobson talking about all the issues that matter most to you and your home lives here in the state of Wisconsin. So again, welcome back from the break. So as your role as a representative, I imagine you do hear from constituents pretty often. So in general, what do you hear the most from your constituents in regards to their concerns? Like what issues are on the minds of our citizens? What issues do you receive the most feedback on? You know, in other words, what are those pressing issues that are kind of plaguing your constituents on a daily basis?
Yeah. Well, I think there's 2 things. One, and it's the hot topic of the day, affordability, right? And we see that a lot. I think in Wisconsin, one of the biggest ways we see that is with education funding, because when the state doesn't fund education, our property taxes tend to go up either via referendum or revenue limits changing. And so that's been a huge issue because when I was on the village board here in Oregon, I worked a lot on housing affordability, and one of the quickest ways to make housing more affordable is to lower property taxes. And one of the easiest ways to lower property taxes is to fund your schools.
Yeah.
So you can see that loop that is created just by one topic, right? But various other things around affordability, whether we're talking about healthcare, prescription drug prices, grocery costs. When SNAP was paused during the federal government shutdown this fall, we did a package of bills to try and not just make food more accessible, but more affordable for Wisconsinites. And so anything we can do on that affordability is important, I think, to most folks around the state. But then the other thing I find people wanting to hear more, just in general, what is the legislature doing? You know, in this media ecosystem, it can be really hard to hear about what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, what bills are going forward. So I do a lot of education around not just affordability, but when people say, hey, I have an issue about this, oh, we have a bill about that, or we just passed a bill. And being able to kind of give that educational lens of this is the things we are working on, and this is the things we can or should be working on.
Yeah, and affordability is a huge issue, and I know in the Village of Oregon itself, as a resident, I know the taxes are on everybody's mind. We've had a failed referendum here. People feel the school property taxes are pretty high, and they're seeing increases with our referendum that has increased. So I know that's a huge concern. Have you heard any concerns from our farmers in the area about the tariffs and how the president's economic policies are either helping or benefiting or hurting them? Or do you ever hear from those folks too?
Yeah, so I'm the ranking member on the Agriculture Committee, so working with our farmers is a particular passion and privilege that I have. And I would say it's not just the tariffs as far as when you think of like our soybean markets. There was a large conversation about how with the tariffs that were going on, our soybean farmers kind of were losing their markets. But also what we can do as a state to support them during this time. So we've been doing things at the state legislature, like we have a bill to incentivize soybean firefighting foam. We're trying to get away from PFAS in our firefighting foam and various other chemicals that we use, but we have a product that would do soybean-based firefighting foam, and our Wisconsin soybean farmers can benefit from that. We also have been working on sustainable aviation fuel, which could be corn or soybean supplement, but a biofuel.
Sure.
That would again help our farmers. So what else can we be doing as a state to try and support farmers as the federal government is creating this uncertainty?
Well, that sounds like some really innovative strategies.
To
find other markets, even that we're not having to ship our products overseas, and really making our domestic production a success here too, and to be able to find a demand. And I think, as we know, from what I've heard, these PFAS chemicals are rather harmful to our environment and to ourselves personally. And if we have an abundance of soybeans, which we know we do in this state, drive around any of these southern tier counties and you see our farmers hard at work every day. So I think that would be a really great incentive and a great way to kind of help our local farmers too. Now, I know you've also launched a campaign bid for the state Senate. So. And your political career so far, you kind of started as a village trustee here on the village board, and you worked your way to the assembly. And now we have our vision set for a state Senate seat, and you will be facing a challenger, Howard Markline, correct? Plus some other primary challengers that will happen in the primary in August as well. So what are your main priorities going to be for your state Senate campaign? Like, how are you going to distinguish yourself from your primary challengers or Mr. Markline, who you hope is your eventual opponent?
Well, I think the first thing I bring to the table is experience, right? I have local government experience. I worked my way through into the assembly and the experience in the assembly. And you can see from the work product that I've been doing at the assembly, really focusing on responding to my constituents. So whether we're talking about school funding, supporting agriculture and our farmers, working on those affordability pieces. So I mentioned healthcare affordability as well. I have a bill that works on pharmacy benefit managers and regulating them to make sure that our prescriptions can get affordable. I was going to say stay affordable, but that's not the case. And so bringing that track record of really trying to tackle the things that folks want to see Wisconsin being a leader on. I think the other thing that I bring is just being out in the community. You know, one of the things that I prioritize is getting out and hearing from my constituents. So whether that's regular office hours that I have throughout the district, or just picking up the phone and calling somebody back when they email or call me. You know, I have a habit of doing that as well, which is not a typical thing, I think, for a legislator. But it is really exciting for me to be able to have those one-on-one conversations with folks. But then when I look at what we could be doing at the legislature, in the state Senate, again, talking about affordability, talking about funding education to make sure that our schools are getting funded, our kids are supported, our property taxes are going down. In this last budget, about two-thirds, just under two-thirds of all of the school districts in the state Senate district were losing funding. That's unsustainable, you know? And we have to make sure that we're prioritizing rural communities. We have to make sure that we are supporting all of the communities from around Wisconsin, no matter where you live, right? And I always say Madison and Milwaukee are great communities, but when people think about Wisconsin, they think about our rural communities, right? They think about our community festivals, our agricultural heritage, and so supporting that and nurturing that is important when we look at the work of state government and the state Senate and what we could be doing for everybody.
And I know there's been some discussion and movement on the school funding debate. I know that Governor Tony Evers has used his special veto powers to kind of write in a very explicit use of funding into for Wisconsin schools. And I know that Speaker Voss has been kind of hesitant and wanting to kind of put that on the table as a bargaining chip, but I've heard recently that might not be the case. What's the update on that?
Yeah,
school
so
funding debate.
We had talked earlier about Governor Evers' legislative plan for 2026, and initially when he rolled out that plan, Speaker Voss said, plan's a no-go unless we reduce the revenue limits, which is the overall dollar amount that a school can generate per student for funding. And recently, Speaker Voss has softened on that the revenue limits may not be the hill he's going to die on, for lack of a better term, which is helpful. But when you think of overall funding for schools, it doesn't solve the actual problem of funding for schools. The revenue limit changed how much each school can generate in dollars per student, but until the state puts in more funding, that additional money is going to end up coming from property taxpayers. So we have to make sure that when we change the revenue limit, that we also provide funding to make sure that schools are getting the dollars they need.
And now that you've kind of gotten a lot of experience on the Wisconsin State Assembly, can you give us some examples of how you think you would move forward with your colleagues from the other side of the aisle to really make things better for Wisconsin too? Because we know, I think a lot of people are frustrated. Our national government isn't able to get much done, and our current state government is both the Senate and the Assembly are controlled by the same Republicans as well, and there's just been a lot of division in this country for a long time, and I think a lot of people are hungry for some movement forward together in a vision for the way things should be. So what do you think has prepared you from your time in the State Assembly to help really put that into motion if you become a state senator?
Yeah. Well, part of that is just being willing to talk to folks, right? And so I mentioned, getting out in the community and talking to folks, but that also includes just talking to your colleagues, whether that's before or after a committee hearing. Sometimes when we're on the floor, you'll take a step back because you want to go have lunch. Well, talking to your colleagues and building those relationships is huge as far as generating the bipartisan support around legislation that you would need to get something passed. I think the other thing that is important is the fact that we have fair maps now based off the maps that were passed into law last year. What that has really done has changed changed who legislators are responsible to. And that always should have been the voters, and it needs to be the voters. And under these maps, it allows the voters to have more power over their legislators. And so that makes people more interested in focusing on the shared values that we all care about. Again, you've heard me talk a ton about schools, but whether that's schools or agricultural heritage or healthcare costs, we can focus on those versus political parties and what a party or a donor wants us to say, because ultimately we know when we go back to election season in the fall, it's the voters who we're responsible to. And I think those, the experience and the conversations and the relationships I've built over time in the Assembly, and then also having the fair maps has been a huge to work on bipartisanship and where we can be going in the future.
Well, good luck to you as you begin this campaign and sustain that. I know that you said the primary is in August, general election then in November, obviously, and good luck to you. And we'll have you back on the show, obviously, when we're closer to that date too. So last time you were here, you had specifically talked about there was some debate about making the old-fashioned the Wisconsin State cocktail. Did that go anywhere, or is that still kind of on the table, not ready to go forward? Because I think that could be an important first step forward.
Not only did it not get passed last session, it hasn't been introduced this session, which seems like a travesty. I'm just going to put that out there. I mean,
Wisconsin State legislators, get this done. I don't think you're going to find anybody.
We're working on a state mushroom and a state bee, and this is the state cocktail unofficially, so we just need to get it in the books. But
Corbel Brandy Sweet, right? That's what we're talking about.
Sweet.
Oh, so that's maybe where the debate lies.
Well, that's why we just did an old-fashioned, and we didn't define it further so that everybody could kind of work with what they wanted. But.
Yeah, well, that's great. But I know, as this assembly and your Wisconsin State legislative session is ending, you've got a lot of important work to do. And so thank you for coming again tonight to take time with us. Good luck to you as you finish out the session, and I hope that many of these bills that you've talked about make their way to the floor and make their way into law. And good luck to you as you move forward with your state Senate campaign.
Thank you. Thank you for having me again.
Of
it's always
course,
a pleasure.
anytime.
Yeah.
And thank you for watching and caring about your local government and the transparency that we offer here through local media here at OCA. So we'll see you next month on Let's Talk Oregon. Thanks.